So we are almost done the Sermon on the Mount. Are you ready? Are you excited? Oh, man. Wait, that's a good thing. That means you've liked it. Yeah, okay. So we have one more week of Sermon on the Mount. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, or you're just coming into City Lake, we've been teaching through the biggest, most famous teaching of Jesus. They call it the Sermon on the Mount because it was the teaching he gave from a hill, and so they call it the Sermon on the Mount. And we're almost done. We've been doing it all summer long. And so today, I want to start with I want to have a picture in your mind of my shoes. So I want you to look at my shoes. Now, I have never thought about shoes as much as I have been lately. I have a bunch of tears in my right Achilles and tendonitis and bursitis and there's some other itises in there, and it's been a very painful 4 or 5 months now. And so I had to buy these shoes, and I'm just going to show you. This is really disgusting, but these shoes have made me an inch taller. Do you see this? I didn't know that these kinds of shoes existed. I spent so much money on these, and inside these shoes, I have orthotics because I'm 80 years old, and I have, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. A rabbit? That would be awesome. I have a cork board. Does anybody have cork board in their shoes? Nobody? See how cool I am? I don't know now how I'm to put this back on. All right. I've never thought so much about my feet or my shoes ever in my life. I was literally in a podiatrist's office, which I've been in multiple times recently, and he was like, I do not approve of the shoes you're wearing. And I said, I've never thought about my shoes. And now, do you ever think about other people's shoes? I look at your shoes all the time now. You don't know it. I was in an office with a bunch of what I would consider older than me people, and they were all wearing my shoes. They all had Hokas on and like these giant cushiony shoes. And I was like, this is it. I'm old now. I've graduated. This is like the kind of shoes that old people wear. And then I looked at my dad's shoes. He didn't have any cushions, so he's still not old. Somehow I'm older than my dad. I don't know how that's happened. But I think about my shoes a lot. I think about my feet a lot. And I'm using all of this as a terrible segue to say, sometimes we need to think about putting ourselves in other people's shoes. Get it? All right. We got to put ourselves in other people's shoes sometimes because that is really what Jesus is going to tell us about. So we're going to just read. Listen, there's one big section left that we're going to cover next Sunday. But today we're just going to talk about one verse because it's so famous and it's so important in the Sermon on the Mount that we can't run past it. And it's this. In everything, in how much stuff, church? Oh, you guys did a callback. Let's go. We haven't even practiced that. All right. In everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, which the Greek there is better translated what you wish or desire for people to do to you. Do to others what you desire they would do for you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. The law and the prophets is the Bible's way, Jesus' way of talking about what we now call the Old Testament, what Jesus would have called his Bible, right? Like his scriptures. He's saying everything that's been written for the last 1,500 years, I can sum up in one sentence. Do to others what you wish they would do to you. Put yourselves in other people's shoes. Put yourselves in their shoes and think, if I was them, what do I wish other people would do for me? And then do it. It's so simple, isn't it? He takes thousands of years and hundreds of laws and he boils them down to this one thing. I want to make 2 quick points. And by quick, I mean it's going to take 30 minutes, okay? First, do is more powerful than don't. And so this statement, Jesus didn't invent this statement, but it existed as don't do to others what you don't want them to do to you. So don't kill people because you don't want to be killed. Don't steal from people because you don't want them to steal from you. Don't cheat on your spouse because you don't want your spouse to cheat on you. And this existed not just in the Bible, in the Old Testament. It exists in the Old Testament. It exists in other places too. It's been written about. But Jesus, as far as we can tell, is the first one to turn it into a positive. Do to others what you wish they would do for you. So instead of don't do these things, it's proactive. So do show mercy to people. Do be kind. Do be generous. I know that's great English as we head back into school, right? But it is how can we think forward instead of just being reactive? How can we be proactive? How can I step towards people instead of just always being on the defensive? Do to others. Do to others what you wish people would do for you and with you. And the second statement is that he's summarizing this big idea. And I want to lean into this a little bit. Because if Jesus says to you, listen, I'm going to boil it all down and give it to you in one memorable statement, you should probably listen. He says, all of the law and the prophets. This sums up the law and the prophets. But as students of the Bible, we should hear more going on there. Because Jesus has said this somewhere else. Jesus has said this in Matthew a little bit later, where someone came up to him and said, teacher, can you boil it down for me? That's what he asks. What is the greatest command? And Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. What's interesting here is this guy asked Jesus for the greatest command. And he says the greatest command, singular, and then he says two commands, which is interesting and also on purpose. And the other is like it. The second is like it. They are married together. Love your neighbor as yourself. And then he says this. Does this sound familiar? All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. So we need to hear what was called the Great Command and the Golden Rule. These are somehow connected in the heart of Jesus. Love God with all of you that you have. Love others as yourself. Do to others what you wish they would do to you. All of these things are connected. And so what we find is if Jesus boils down all of the Bible, there's three actors: God, myself, and the other, right? But I can't love others if I don't love God. And I can't love God if I don't love others. Doesn't the Bible tell us that? If you say you love God but you don't love your neighbor, you don't love God. It's so interesting if you read the rest of the Bible, like past Jesus, his followers really internalize this. James talks about it. Paul talks about it. So you can't love God without loving others. You can't love others without loving God. You can't love yourself if you don't love God. You can't love others if you don't love yourself. It's all connected. You can't say that you love others and yet not do stuff. Love can't just be a word. It has to be an action, right? Doesn't James also talk about that? If you say that you love this person and they show up in need and you say, go, be blessed, instead of meeting their practical needs, you don't love them. And if you don't love them through action, you don't love God. James connects it all together. Jesus connects it all together. Somehow, in the economy of God, in the kingdom of God, loving God and loving others through action is the same thing. So we can't just go to church and sing worship songs and study the Bible and have quiet times and not do stuff for other people. And we can't just be social justice warriors and out there doing stuff and volunteering but have no relationship to God. They aren't independent. You can't separate them. God says they are all one together. The great command, love God, love others as yourself, do to others as you would have them do to you. We need a relationship with God in order to truly love ourselves and others. See, here's the thing is you can turn this into a just do it mentality where you have to figure it out. But the crazy thing about this, and also maybe the blessing, is that you can't do this on your own. You can't do this on your own. I want to show you something. I'm going to nerd out for a second on the Bible. I invite you, fellow nerds, nerd out with me, okay? So, if we back up to June when we started this, there was a point where Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, do not think that I have come to abolish the law and the prophets. I have not come to abolish them to fulfill them. So remember he said that. And now, after all this teaching, he says, so in everything, do to others as you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. Those are connected. Now, I just need to take you with me to the Nerdville. Here we go. The Sermon on the Mount, I told you this last week, is a bunch of threes. Because what they would do, Jewish speakers and Jewish writers would write in such a way that you could memorize stuff. Because so much of their traditions were oral. And they wouldn't write in the same way like we think of movies as like crescendoing and having a climax at the end, they would often write and tell stories with bookends and a meaningful middle. Okay? So check this out. This is going to blow your mind. I didn't make this up on my own. I'm definitely stealing everything I ever talk about. Here we go. Here's a rough outline of the Sermon on the Mount. It starts with the Beatitudes, 3 sets of 3, which is like the introduction. And he's basically saying, I'm going to turn what you think about the kingdom of heaven on its head. In the kingdom of heaven, the people who are devalued on earth are valued, and the people that are valued aren't seen as the valuable, right? He flips it over. The poor, blessed are the poor, blessed are those who mourn, right? Remember all that? And then he tells these 3 parables. If we embody the kingdom ethic on this earth, we will be like salt, light, and a city on a hill. And then he says, I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. So you see the little parentheses, I've come to fulfill the law, and then at the bottom, this sums up the law. In the middle, there's 3, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 sets of 3. Okay? So there's 3 case studies, and then there's 3 more case studies. Then there's the 3 practices. There's the 3 don'ts but do's, right? I tell you, don't store treasures on earth, store it in heaven. Don't judge, right? And then there's the 3 approaches to God that we covered last week. Ask, seek, and knock. What's in the middle? I highlighted it for you to make it really easy. Yeah, it's the 3 practices, right? Giving, prayer, and fasting. What's in the middle of that? Prayer. The center of the center is the Lord's Prayer. The whole Sermon on the Mount, in the middle, the center of the center is the Lord's Prayer. All of this hangs on the Lord's Prayer. So you can't do what we just talked about without God's help. And what is the Lord's Prayer? The Lord's Prayer is, your will be done. Your kingdom come right here as it is in your kingdom. And so here's the ironic thing, is when you pray that prayer, you then can become the fulfillment of that prayer. So long, I just thought I pray that prayer and I'm waiting for God to come do something. But the reality is we're praying it and we're doing it. God, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. What does your kingdom look like? Your kingdom looks like giving generously without making a big deal out of it. Your kingdom looks like asking, seeking, and knocking. Your kingdom looks like not judging. Your kingdom looks like enemy love, right? And so God, let your kingdom come, and then I will step into becoming the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven when I love my neighbor, when I love my enemy, when I don't judge those who hurt me, when I'm a person of kindness and forgiveness and peace, when I'm over abundantly generous but I don't ask for anything in return, when I live the kingdom way. I am answering the prayer. So that's kind of one view. But think of it another way. I can't do that without God's help. All right, fine. You don't have to like it, but it's awesome. You can't do for others what they do for you unless God is enabling you to do it. But at the same time, you can't just ask for God to do it because you become the answer to the prayer. It's this beautiful partnership that God has always wanted with people, where he would rule together with us on the earth, right? Go back to the beginning. Now we're really nerding out. Genesis, where he creates Adam and Eve, and he says, you will rule together in the garden and walk in the cool of the night with the Father. There's perfect unity between God and man and woman, and we're ruling together. That's the picture of the kingdom of God, where all people are loved and equal, and their justice reigns, and righteousness reigns, and love abounds. I think I said love already. And that's where we're headed, in the new heaven and the new earth. But the cool thing is Jesus is like, we're not waiting till then. I've chosen the church to give the foretaste, to be the salt, the light, the city on the hill on this broken, sinful, dark world right now. Isn't that exciting? And the way that we can do it is we can do for others what we wish they'd do for us. See, the golden rule is so simple. Anyone can do it. You're 5 years old, you can do this. You're 12 years old in here, you can do this. You're 80 years old in this room, you can do this. But it's so hard, no one can do it without God's help. The golden rule is so simple, anyone can do it. You can do it if you're a banker. You can do it if you're an accountant. You can do it if you're a soccer coach. You can do it if you're a mom. You can do it if you're, vice president in a bank. I said bank already. Wow, I'm really into banks. Anyone can do it, but it's so hard you can't do it alone. This can't become something that you just decide, I will be a better person. It's not it. You and I need our lives to be changed, because have you ever wanted something that God didn't want for you? Right? Like, do for others what you wish they'd do for you, but your desires have to be changed and shaped by the will of God. Do for others what they wish you would do for you, and what you wish they would do for you is the kingdom of heaven coming on earth. They're related, they're connected, you can't pull them apart. I want to do for you what it would look like for the kingdom of heaven to happen in your life right now. I want you to do for me what it would look like for the kingdom of heaven to happen in my life right now. You with me? All right, cool. So, did somebody clap? Oh, thank you. Man, doing for others what you, is that what you wanted? Okay, I got you. I'm there. Do for others. I got it. All right, what you wish they would do for you. All right, so let's be practical, and then we'll end. Yep. Okay. So let's say you're upset with your boss for not responding to your email faster, for leaving you hanging, for maybe because that email didn't come soon enough, it kind of put you in a bad position with someone else you're working with. What do? Put yourselves in their shoes. Have you ever been the person who didn't send an email on time? Okay, some of you are like, no chance. I am very punctual. That's fine. I know we hate you and love you, but most of us have, right? Like, put yourself in their shoes. Put yourself in their shoes and say, I wonder why they haven't sent the email. And not like, I wonder why they haven't, but like with love and kindness. And think, if I was in their shoes, how would I want me to treat me? Are you with me? Okay. I would want understanding, wouldn't you? I would want some grace. Have you ever made a mistake and had someone give you grace? So nice, isn't it? Have you ever made a mistake and have someone who has no grace? Yeah, and you're like, man, they are going through a hard time, right? So put yourselves in their shoes. Maybe you could respond to your boss, hey, I don't need to spell it out for you. You get it. All right, your teenager makes a mistake. I love this. This is one of my favorite things to say to parents of teenagers. Do you remember 20 years ago or 30 years ago, depending how old you are? Do you remember being a teenager? Sometimes I think as adults, we think our teenagers should be as mature as we are now instead of as mature as we were then. You know what I mean? Like, put yourselves in your teenager's shoes. It's harder now to be a teenager, I'm convinced, than ever so far. Okay. In recent history, I know Chris is he's already texting me saying, what about like before, there was, what are pipes and water and like, people, I know. But I'm just saying, with technology right now, it's tough to be a teenager. Put yourself in their shoes. Like, if your teenager is responding to you in a sassy way, like, maybe like engage in a different way other than just anger and punishment. I'm not saying we shouldn't punish. I love punishing kids, right? I'm all for it. Right? You should definitely punish your kids. And that's not even a joke. You should definitely punish your kids. Punishment and discipline, a big part of growing up. But I am saying, like, once in a while, we need to put ourselves in. What would be the thing that I would want to hear from my parent? Your friend's making harmful decisions with their life. What do? Do you talk about them with other friends? Do you I don't know what's going on with them. They just keep blowing up their life. They're such a mess. Do you gossip about them? Do you avoid them? Like when people start to tank or they start to walk away from God or they leave the church and you start to avoid them and you're like, it's just awkward. I don't want to have to talk to them. Any conversation's going to be weird. Is that what you would want people to do for you? If you were struggling in your faith and you left the church and you were having a hard time and you were making bad decisions, what would you want your friends to do? Disappear? Do unto others as you would have them do to you. Put yourself in their hokas. All right. The guy on the side of the road, hokas or shoes? Stick with me, Samuel. All right. Last week, we drove by a guy on the side of the road, one of the many guys, right? He's out there with the sign and whatever. I don't know his story. And Mandy and I, we usually try to keep, well, not me. Mandy keeps stuff in the car to give people like that. She's just frantically looking around the car, can't find any food, can't find any money. And so I did what every good Bible-believing Christian did. I ignored him. He is like 6 inches from me, right? And I'm like, I have nothing to do. I'm at a red light. And as I pull away, I thought, you know what? I should have just rolled my window down and talked to him. Okay, now, if it's safe, I get it. I know. It was safe. But, he's not an object. He's not a nuisance. This is where it gets so hard, right? Blessed are the poor. He is esteemed in the kingdom of heaven. And I'm supposed to be in the kingdom of heaven. I'm supposed to be living like heaven on earth. Like, the least I could do is roll down the window and be like, hey, we don't have anything, but I just, what's your name? I'm Christian. It's nice to meet you. I mean, I could be spiritual and be like, can I pray for you, right? Or I could just like talk to him. Put myself in his shoes. If I was there, what would I want? How embarrassing. It's already got to be somehow embarrassing to be doing that. And I know. Just hear me out, right? Like, can you imagine just a car after car just ignoring you? I don't know. I mean, it's just little things. I feel like I already talked about that. Okay. All right. I have a couple slides about the difference between being codependent and this, and I don't have time to talk about that. But if you're curious, email me. All right. I really think that this is so important, and it's something that everyone can do. Worship team, come up. This is something everyone can do. It's so simple. Everyone can do it. But it is so hard that we can only do it with God's help. Would we be willing to ask the Holy Spirit to start to alert us to those moments, to start to speak to us about putting ourselves in other people's shoes, to start to treat people the way that we would want to be treated? All of the things that we learn, all the things we read in the Bible, can be boiled down into this. And it's more than not doing stuff. It's proactive. It's leaning into relationships. I'll just do one story. So I often feel like what I do as a friend is I send people, I'll be like, let me know if you need anything. Do you ever do that? And what I know is they're not going to ask for anything. I really struggle with that because I also don't want to show up at their house unannounced. You know what I mean? But I have a friend, Josh, who's really good at this. And he will harass me when he knows I'm not going through a good time. And he will text me. I don't even know how he remembers it. I don't know how he remembers to do it this often. Probably because he's just a gym teacher and doesn't really have anything to do. But come on, I was being so nice to you. It got a little awkward in the room. Okay. No, but he will text me repeatedly, multiple times a day, multiple days through the week. Like, how are you doing today? How are you doing today? What's going on today? Let's get lunch. Let's get together. I think he's lonely, honestly, is what I think. Christine and him must be struggling. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. But he's doing for me what I would want someone to do for me. And I think he's doing for me what he wants other people to do for him. Right? I think it's just so easy. That doesn't cost him anything, but it's made an impact in my life. There's so many ways that we can start to do this. How do you wish that people would treat you if you were the person working at Wawa, if you were the person who sits next to you every day in the office or whatever, like the person on your Zoom call, the person who teaches in the classroom down the hall from you, your friend who you see at soccer practice? What if you just started to think about this more? God, show me, how can I treat people the way that I wish I was treated? And then where the rubber hits the road is when you get hurt, or when you get your feelings hurt, when you get neglected, when you get left out, when people forget about you. How can you treat people that have hurt you the way you wish that people would treat you when you make a mistake? How can we just move in grace and forgiveness? It's going to cost us something then. It's really going to be costly. But I think this is getting into the meat of what it means to be followers of Jesus. It's so much more than just, I believe in Jesus. It's a life change. It's everything we do and say becoming integrated into our faith. And then our faith in Jesus, our love for him, flows out in how we treat other people. It's so challenging. Are you challenged? The Word of God is so challenging. Okay, we want to offer prayer, and then we're going to end with a song.